All right, everybody. I'm like so pumped about this show, and I've been sharing text back and forth with Daniel. But man, when I read his bio, father of 8 kids, the man was overseas and blew himself up on a IED. And then the last thing that caught my mind was he's a beekeeper. And all I could think about is one of my favorite movies. And I'm like, oh my God, I'm going to be able to talk to a real beekeeper. This is the coolest thing ever. So, anyway, we have a lot to talk about. It could go so many different directions today, but I'd love to welcome to the stage Daniel Carlton. How you doing, buddy?
Good, sir. How are you? Thanks for having
Uh,
me.
oh, I can't wait. And you know what? Some people lose a limb, whether it's physically, metaphorically, mentally. They tend to lose their identity, and that's one thing you refuse to give up is that identity. So I can't wait to talk about that. But I kind of want to set the stage. You know, can you kind of take us back to that moment? Because I want to kind of get into your head about what was like. I mean, you stepped on that IED and and they told you your legs weren't going to work and you refused to give up. Can you kind of just take us back to that story that you've probably told a million times, but just to set the stage?
No problem. Oddly enough, it's not a story I haven't told a lot because to me, there's not a whole lot to it. Just a workplace injury. Um,
Workplace.
yeah.
Place
So,
injury
but,
right
but
off
when
the
it,
start, man. That's
yeah,
great.
but I mean, it's true. I mean, you volunteer for combat or for service. I was a Green Beret guy, knowing that I was going to more than likely, or there's no question, I was going to be put in probably some very dangerous situations. And this was part of the job. And when it happened, immediately I knew what had just happened. And so you just work through your, what you train on. Look for your rifle, look for your tourniquet. And then I couldn't do any of those. My eyes were ripped open. I mean, I was a mess. You lost part of my finger and I was in real bad shape. Um, but you just rely on your buddies more than anything to come by and let them do what they've been trained to do. And at the end of the day, I realized, like, look, as long as I stay alive, I will figure out the rest. And that's been my mentality the whole entire time. And that was in November of 2012.
So when they told you you were going to lose your leg, and you said like, can you take? We're sports medicine doctors, and people come in for a sprain or a break, and they want to give up everything. Can you kind of talk about when you heard that from the doctor, and kind of what through your mind, and how you made that decision?
Well, initially, I knew at least my foot was gone. I couldn't see it, but I knew from just being there with the guys. And that was my left foot. Eventually, over time, an unknown infection ate the rest of my leg above the knee. Now, I remember the ortho surgeon saying, hey, we want to keep you below the knee. That's a great place to be. Through knee is okay. Above knee is not where we want to go. And the day he told me we got to go above the knee, I was crushed. But at the end of the day, I was like, look, I'm still alive. It does not matter. I will figure it out. My right leg was filleted open. It's in bad shape. I got a lot of issues with it. And they said, hey, we can just cut this one off because it's useless, essentially. And that's when I kind of tried to get out of the bed and choke the guy. Uh, yeah, because I was like, just give me a chance. Let me try. And if limb salvage is too much, then we'll talk about an amputation down the road. But I was like, I got to try. So I think people don't realize you don't need all of your limbs to live a good life or to live life, period. It certainly helps make it an easier life at times. Don't get me wrong, but it's not a requirement by any means. So it's just having the mentality of like appreciating what you have. And at the end of the day, that's being alive for me. And so since I was alive, it's like, okay, the rest I can figure out. So
You know, a lot of people out there listening, I kind of want to grab them in before we get to the real meat and the fun. But a lot of people sometimes can't even get out of bed. And, you know, we always see everybody when it's social media or anything like that, we see the good. You know, we see all the what everybody's doing and the power, and you're doing endurance events now, which we'll get into, and strength and all this purpose. And you talk, but, you know, just to kind of hook the audience, you had some dark days, I'm sure. How did you get through those when the camera's off, the pain was real? and there wasn't much going on.
It's it's just having a grateful attitude. I mean, I certainly, when I was laying in bed in San Antonio at the military hospital there, I went through I went through 3 days, 3 nights of just complete darkness where I was probably the darkest I've ever been, where I was literally having this battle inside of me, calling out to the devil to come say, "Look, let me go back to Afghanistan, get me better so I can kill the person that did this to me, and then you can have my soul. It doesn't matter. I just wanted revenge." And I did that for 3 nights, wasn't sleeping, just in a real bad spot. And I came to the crossroads and realized, like, you can't live like this. You can't live with like that darkness in your heart and like that burden on your shoulders. And you just got to move forward. You got to be able to just understand the situation. Like I said, have a little gratitude of what I had left, and just charge forward and just be a good person. So to live like that, I mean, it doesn't do anybody any good.
Hey Daniel, have you always been like that before the injury? What was your youth like? Do you always have a positive mental attitude, or
I believe so. I'm generally a really easygoing guy, really soft spoken kid. My mom's Hawaiian, so we got a lot of jokes that, oh, you're just living on island time all the time. It's in your blood. Um, and, and that's just my temperament, even in, just everything from gunfights and stuff like that, just kind of being able to keep a cool head to making jokes. And I got my leg blown off. First thing I did when my friend George came over was tell a joke. And then from there, it just kind of like leveled out and just had to stay calm, because being able to control your mental state is such an advantage in the worst scenarios. And I knew that at the time, even though I was messed up, I realized, like, okay, you cannot let yourself go off the deep end here, because that will, I think, spiral out of control. So
I'm going to ask the audience to listen to your words very closely, because I noticed from the moment you started talking, e- even the words you use play down what actually happened. To most people, it'd be, oh, the trauma was unbelievable. They get emotional about it, and they use big, overwhelming, words that put you in a state that's negative. So I don't know if you learned that, but how did you rewire your brain to speak in a way that that makes everything okay?
perspective. By this point, having been in combat for a few years and being deployed, I've seen, there's 10 guys that I know that died. Bringing back pieces of a person in the back of your truck, and it'll change you. Seeing horrible things happen to children and to civilians. And I mean, being in combat really changed my perspective on life, because I know there's a lot of people, there's a lot of families in America, and even our coalition partners, that would do anything to have like their husband or their son back or their daughter back for one more day. To do the little things we get to do every day, go to a movie or have dinner together or take their kids out for ice cream, stuff like that. And so having experienced that throughout my time in the military, and that's why I told the doc, I was like, hey, just keep me alive. I'll figure it out. Because at the end of the day, I'm able to go back home, play catch with my kids. Even if I'm in a wheelchair, I'll be able to throw the ball, have some fun. Uh, like I said, I was like, I don't need 4 limbs to live. I just, I just want to live, and not take anything for granted. So that for me was the switch of like, okay, you're alive still. Don't waste it. There's a lot of people wish they had a loved one out still alive. So get after it and do good things.
All right, fess up, man. Did you ever want to take your life?
Not one time. Never occurred to me. Um, yeah, it wasn't a question, because that's a slap in the face to the people that who, like I said, my buddies who are dead. That I have this opportunity to live. And if they could come back and have what I have, without question, they would do it. So to me, it's like, there's no sense in living in a bottle, popping pills, you know, um, considering taking my own life, because life is so precious. And I have have a pretty good life, like a great family and great friends. So, yeah, and just an insult to the people that made the ultimate sacrifice, that would do anything to be here today. So, yeah, it wasn't even a question.
So far, so good. I mean, so far, so impressive, actually. All right, Daniel. So I'm going to challenge you again. When you make a joke about whatever you've got going on, is it to hide pain, or do you really feel that sense of humor?
I think it's just sense of humor. Um,
He's answering all the
yeah.
right questions. The right questions, man. That's fantastic.
I mean, like I said, it's just, I mean, it could always be worse. You know what I mean? And that's kind of how I look at things. Like, well, because I mean, doing rehab in San Antonio, I was doing rehabs with 19-year-old kids who were in the infantry, young men who have no legs left or just have an arm left. And so guys who are burned 40, 50, 60% of their body. And I'm like, I look at myself, I'm like, man, I'm gone above the knee. My other leg's hammered, but it's still there. It's like, I got off pretty easy, and then and then you hear the stories, like a 19, 20 or a 22-year-old kid who's like, every time I go to the bar, I get laughed at. I get looked at. Girls don't want to talk to me. My life is over. And that really kind of hit me hard to hear it from a perspective of a young service member of like, man, these kids have the rest of their life in front of them. And they've already kind of seen, they're going down that negative pathway because they're, everywhere they go, everywhere I go, people look and stare, and they just want a normal life, hanging out with their buddies, having a few drinks, chasing girls, getting a girlfriend, that kind of thing. And they feel, and a lot of them still do to this day, that they will never be able to achieve that because of how they look.
It's funny, Terry. We're only a few minutes into this conversation, and he already makes David Goggins look like a puss. Just saying. So
I don't know about that.
yeah.
I don't know about that, but he's right up there with them. I'm for sure about that.
And I'll segue right into the fact that not only do you comfortably deal with what you have, but you also do things at a high level. How do you perform at a high level like you do? What I won't even say it. Tell the audience what you just did that nobody else would imagine doing.
So just
You're
a few
so
days,
humble, man. You know that? You're so humble, right?
a few days ago, as of this recording, I applied, I think the end of last year of 2025. I applied for, it's called the 3 to 7 Rite of Passage, which is run by Navy SEAL, Chad Wright out in Georgia. And I just happened to see a video of it, and it's a 24-hour movement with a rucksack on your back through the mountains of Northwest Georgia, and you can't sit down. The rules are you eat, you drink, and you move. And there's a few resupply breaks, which is about 10 minutes apiece, and the rest of the time you're just moving. And so for me, I was like, I can do this. I know I can do this, but I have to apply. And if I get accepted, I'm going to show up and just do the best I can. And these people get thousands of applicants. And there were 26 or 25 that were accepted. And 18 of us showed up and 17 of us finished. And it was not easy. Just the mechanics of being an amputee, of walking, and especially with a limb salvage type leg with foot drop and all these other issues. It was very, very difficult. And to be honest with you, I couldn't have done it without my teammates. And it is a team building leadership and exercise, but also it's an exercise of really seeing what you're made of. And so I was the first and only amputee ever to apply. And when I show up and these guys kind of look at me, they're like, we'll see what you can do, man. And I kind of expected it to be run like a special operations light kind of course, with Mr. Wright's background. And there was a little bit of it that I saw, but you coach your teammates, the night before. We're like, hey guys, this is kind of what I think's going to happen. And everyone's giving their input, and you just do your best to put your teammate before yourself, before me, to make sure that they succeed. And I think that's in life is a huge part of success, is taking care of someone else before yourself. And so this course, that's how I approached it. I was like, look, just be a good teammate. The rest will happen. And don't quit. Don't ever think about quitting, because it was cold, it was dark, and it was hard. But I wasn't going to quit. I was like, there's no way. Like, Mr. Wright and his team will literally have to drag my body down this mountain before I quit. So it was a great experience.
Tell me one of the hardest parts of that whole event for you.
To be honest with you, it was just, it was just going up mountains, because, in order to not have my prosthetic foot drag across the terrain, you have to engage the hip and kind of sling it around. And so doing that for 24 hours, like, my prosthetic was starting to fall off. You working harder. I think there's a weird stat of, like, an above the knee amputee uses up to 80% more energy than a regular person, because of how the body reacts and how you got to move your prosthetic. So I already knew I was going to be burning through more calories and use more energy than the next person. But just overemphasizing that gait just to make sure my foot would clear, so I don't fall down and get disqualified for being immobile and then sitting down. So I was just really focusing on that.
Wait, how many vertical feet did you actually climb? Did they record that?
That's a good question. Clear. So they were not allowed to have, any kind of timekeeping device or any kind of tracking device, so you don't look at the phone and things like that. So, I think one of the instructors said, we got away from that, of keeping, like, the stats. We have a general idea, but, at the end of the day, it's about succeeding as a team and seeing individuals grow, not necessarily the miles. So I think I imagine they probably used that as a benchmark, how the altitude that people gained and the miles they went, but they realized that lots of teams went very far, but they fell apart. Teammates were fighting amongst each other, guys were quitting, and no one was encouraging them to get back out of the van and carry on with the mission, versus teams that would work really, really well together and maybe not go as far. So I think they're like, let's not focus on the kind of the data, but let's really, really make sure that these folks are getting what they came here for and helping these individuals grow, because everyone showed up with their own reason why they were there. And that was pretty powerful too. But man, they did a great job. I will say that my hat's off to the 3 of 7 guys.
Let me go back before any of the events of, losing body parts and things like that. But when you were training for, in the military, and what do they call it? Buds? Is that Terry, what they,
For the SEALs, for buds, but for a Green Beret, you call it a Special Forces Assessment Selection, SFAS.
How was that for you, knowing that this event that you just were in was probably harder than going through that previous training? How was that for you?
I mean, it comes down to the basics, right? You make a goal, you set your goal, and then you create a pathway to meet those goals, right? Whether you're going to BUDS or SFAS or Ranger School or whatever it is, or an endurance event, it all starts with planning and commitment. And I think that goes for anything in life. And these events are no different. So for for Special Forces, I came from what's called a soft skill MOS, like a job in the Army where I was a truck driver. Not a traditional job that feeds into special operations. Mostly they're getting guys who are infantry or Ranger that, these kind of things. So for me, I was like, look, I got to put in a lot of work to make this happen. And here's my plan. And you just do it and you assess and see where you're getting stronger or weaker. You adjust your plan and you show up in the best shape physically and mentally possible. And you just make a commitment to yourself, like I said earlier. And when I went to Special Forces selection, I was like, these guys will have to drag my body out of here before I quit. And so that's a huge part of anything we do is just our mindset.
Speaking of which, you know, teammates can make and break you. Teammates. When you have that close of camaraderie and you have those conversations, those deep conversations. What are some of the things that you would talk about, or better yet, what were some of the things that they would say to you to push you or move you along? And what would you say to others that were struggling when you might have been doing better than them?
Well, I think by me saying this, and I've said this to other people too, is man, this is going to hurt. Okay. We volunteered to be here knowing willingly that it was going to hurt us. But I was like, quitting is going to hurt more, and that resonates with people. And someone told me that before I went to Special Forces selection. They're like, look, man, you're volunteering yourself to just get wrecked without knowing what's going to happen because there was no information about it. And so I've really kept that close to my heart in all the things I do that's a good life lesson, like you can persevere, but when you quit, not to say you can't bounce back and recover from tapping out at a time, in your life, but it hurts and you can learn from those lessons from being hurt. That's for sure. But having great people around you who are there to pick you up is absolutely critical in all of our lives. That community, people who are there to support you.
Hey, Daniel, why do you think people that have suffered like you search for the hard shit instead of the easy stuff?
I think it's just a reminder. Well, I can't answer that for the general population, but I know for me, like I said, it comes back to the premise of, man, I'm alive. I get to feel these things. I get to challenge myself. And through those challenges, I've also met quite a few people who said, I had my leg cut off, or I'm dealing with limb loss, or I'm about to lose my limb. And they've seen me doing some crazy events. And they're like, you've given me hope. You've inspired me and shown me that things are still possible, which I was never in my intent. I just wanted to go out and do some cool stuff. Really, I don't want to say selfishly, but kind of selfishly to keep the edge sharp in my life. So, but people post things on Instagram or whatever platform it is. And I've met people who are like, I saw you do these things and it was crazy for me to see that. Now I've started this journey in my own life and they're doing great things for themselves. So I think that's why people do these things. They choose to. They want to show what the human spirit is capable of.
And on that note, what do you say to the people that said, boy, I just had it rough. I've earned the right to hang on the couch for a while?
Don't do it. Take the break if you need it, but don't get comfortable on that couch. We're all guilty of it, that's for sure. But enjoy it, have a little reward, but don't fall into that false sense of, a great accomplishment where I think for some people it lures them into being really comfortable and then they just kind of start going back to where they were. It's like, well, rest up, find the next great thing, work hard at it, set your goals and do it. That's what it's all about.
I got to ask him this because I had a coach in high school that used to, we wrestled for years, and this coach left a mark on my memory, a positive inspiration. And we were dragging our ass on the floor, and he would just chant, gotta go, can't stop, gotta go, can't stop. And my question to you is is there a chant or something you say that occupies your mind when when the shit's hitting the fan?
It's changed over the years, and I don't like to swear, but I'll say it. It's like when things get hard, it's like just don't be a bitch. Like it's plain and simple. Yeah, and I've said that even when I was in Georgia. I was like, it's cold, we were wet, and we were just moving for 24 hours. I was like, just don't be a bitch. And then just like you hammer that into my own brain. I was like, okay. And then it's just somehow makes me feel better. So that's kind of like that mantra that I've kind of adopted over the last few years because it's self-degrading. I'm like cursing at myself. And to be honest with you, I don't want people to think of me like that either. I want people to say, man, look at what this dude has done. Like not for the sake of lifting myself up, but to show other people what we can do. Cause you can quit. And I think too, it's like I tell my kids, be humble in victory and be humble in defeat. You're going to win some, you're going to lose some. So, but in order to prevent yourself from losing, you just don't be a bitch. So
Spencer,
I
the
know what you're gonna
song.
say. I know what you're gonna say. Go for it.
Every time I'm about ready to quit, Spencer turned me on the song when we first started the show. It's "Crying Like a Bitch," and every time I'm about ready to quit, that song always seems to come up on my hit list, and I'll be about ready to stop, and God and damn it, that song comes up, and I gotta keep going. So it's just so funny you mentioned that was your mantra.
The moment he said that, I go, oh, I know what's running through Terry's head right now. That's great, man. That's fantastic. I love that.
Hey, I do want to ask one question that was Spencer was going to ask, but I did a lot of mountaineering a while back, and I'd be gone for 3 weeks up in the mountains and the high ones, the 20,000 foot ones, and after a while, when you don't have cell phones, you don't have anything like that, and you've been rucking for a week at a time, the conversations start kind of coming out when you're with a group of people because there's nothing else to occupy your time. And we've already talked about the beauty of the mountains and the solitude and the quietness and all that. That's one of the things I asked you on the text. What are some of the stories that comes out in these long rucks when it's brutal and you don't have a distraction of a phone or anything like that? What are some of the stories that have come out that have impressed you?
it's a great question. You never know who you're going to meet on these things. I did a ruck with, it's called Official Project Grit, ruck club out of Central Texas. Changed my life, the way these people operate. And I did a 75-mile ruck, which I'm actually getting ready to do 2 days from now. Again, so 75 miles from Gonzales, Texas to the Alamo. And last year was the first year I did it. And the stories I heard from people, why they were there, people talking about losing a child, people talking about looking for a way to deal with their addictions to, alcohol and drugs, or people who are just there because they think it would be fun, so like it's amazing. And you have these great conversations, but then again, those conversations turn a different direction as the day goes on. Cause I think we did it last year in 33 hours of just walking. You take your breaks and you just keep rucking. But so as the night happens and it gets really quiet and it gets really dark, people start opening up about, trauma, abuse, because, as literally the environment gets dark and lonely, they kind of adopt that darkness too, which is really interesting in the human psyche. And man, people will just open up to each other, talk about these horrible tragedies in their lives. And I think that fuels a lot of people for doing these hard things to kind of break out of that or leave that trauma behind or overcome that obstacle in their life or that darkness. It's I can't tell you the amount of conversations that I've had that were just I was not expecting, and probably the most tragic ones come from from a loss of someone that they knew, like a suicide or a loss of a loved one or a child. And it breaks people down, and you just want to be there to support them and help them not only finish that event, but get through that next mile or the next step, but be there with them from that point on until, you know, today or tomorrow. You never know what you're going to get into. That's for sure.
Yeah, unbelievable. So, if you don't mind, because I'll tell you, we've been doing this for 4 years now, and we've interviewed like over 275 guests. And I got to tell you, Daniel, there are a few stories that we've been told that it's like one is worse than the other, and each one, including yours, makes you go, "My life is great. What am I upset about?" And you look at it and you go, I'm upset about something stupid, you know? You Is there one or two or whatever, is there a story that you could vividly describe about somebody else that made you sympathetic?
It's a great question. I mean, people that are still here with me today, there's some, like Garrett George,
Yeah,
or what a story. That guy, one of your previous guests, and he's a great friend of mine.
just thinking of that.
Um,
Yeah.
my friend Terrence Ogden, the official Project Red founder, when I first met him and heard his story about overcoming addiction in jail, in and out of jail and just turning his life around, um, and dealing with some physical stuff, I'm like, man, I got a pretty good. And then, like I said, all the wounded warriors that I've met over the last decade, 12, 13 years, dealing with the physical and mental burdens of war, and the trauma that they've had. Like, there's no place in my heart to feel sorry for myself. You know what I mean? Because I was like, man, it could always be worse. And I truly believe that. Not to say that I don't have bad days. Everyone has bad days. But if you can find something that ground yourself and like really reel you back to kind of your own reality, man, it's these stories and the people that I've met. I'm like, you know what? You know, it's not that bad. So go do stuff, and enjoy your life a little bit. So
You know, it's funny that my grandmother is not around anymore. We would go to her with all sorts of, you know, whacked stuff, and she would come back with the same thing. And she was from Romania, so she would have an accent. She would say, "It could be worse," and I go, "It could be worse." What? And then you realize I say it till this day, and you're right. So you're speaking the same language. Could be worse.
yes,
It's
sir.
it's something to be grateful for. You have quite a few children. You obviously live for them. How is that connection? I mean, there's eight of them, right? Eight
Yes,
children.
sir.
Yeah.
Yes, sir.
How is that connection with all of them, or one in particular, or anything? Is there any background on that?
It's great. When I first met my wife when we were dating, she was like, I want 8 kids. And so I was like, no way. It's like 4 or 5, I think would be excellent. But I mean, it worked out perfectly. They're great kids. I will say this: when I lost my leg, we had 4 at the time, and that really put them in. And they were young. I mean, this was in 2012. Was that 14, 13 years ago, something like that? Bad at math. And so my oldest son, Danny, and and then Elvis is about 18 months younger than he is, but it really forced them to grow up. Seeing what happened to me and seeing kind of what mom was going through. And I didn't realize it at the time. And it wasn't until some time later. I'm like, man, these kids stepped up because they had to. And no one told them, like, hey, you got to step up. Like you're the man of the house now, kind of deal. They naturally did it. And it was amazing to kind of look back and see how that molded them into the men they are today, the young men. Danny will be 21 this year and Elvis will be 19. and being grateful for how they responded to that, because you see a lot of families dissolve when they're dealing with trauma, and injuries and things like this that are life changing. Our road wasn't easy, but because of how our family was just formed and the things we instilled in our kids and our values that we put in place, like they stepped up and just absolutely just were rock stars. And they still are today. I give them a hard time. Um, but yeah, I mean, I can't say I can connect to one better than the other, but they're all special in their own ways. And it's interesting because my younger kids who never knew me as a whole person, air quotes, they don't know any better. Um, so it's funny to be around little kids who are just like, "Oh, look at your dad. He's got a robot leg." And they're like, "Yeah, this is, he's a robot," because they never knew any better and they're still young. So that's always a fun conversation to have with little kids.
Actually, that was the segue for me because you had 4 that were around before the accident, correct?
Yes,
Right?
sir.
And so, in fact, I don't even like calling it an accident because you're so cued in on the right wording. So I'll call it an event before
Sure.
the event. So the 4, how do you can you determine how old the oldest one was after the
He
during the
was,
event?
I think, 7, 2. Yeah, he was like 6, probably almost 7 years old when it happened, or about to turn 7.
How did you talk to him about what happened?
Yeah, I didn't. I just, I, I just told him the same thing. I was like, "Oh, Dad had an accident. Like I got hurt." Because at the same time, it's kind of like how I answered the question today. Because there's a ton of kids who say, "Hey, Mister, what happened to you?" I'm like, "Oh, I had an accident, a long time ago, whatever." I don't want to tell this kid like, "Oh, I got my leg blown off in the war, son." And that kid's like, "What?"
Yeah, yeah,
Like traumatizes
yeah.
this little kid. So like that's how it's always been. Like, "Hey, I had an accident." Obviously years later as they grew up, they knew what happened. Back then I was like, "Hey, I just had an accident. I'm okay. It's gonna be fine." Because like I said, I didn't want to scar my own kids even more. Like, you know, because when they showed up in San Antonio, we were living in Northwest Florida, near Destin, Florida. Special forces. I had a beard. My hair was longer. Um, and so they show up. I'm already looking kind of unusual, to them to begin with. And so now I'm missing body parts. I got hoses all over me, tubes all over me. And so they're like, they have to wear these gowns, because of I'm in intensive care and I have these infections. And so they're like, "What is happening here? Why are all these tubes coming out of you? And why you got this ridiculous beard and this ridiculous hair?" And I'm just like, all I wanted was to hug them, like, "Hey, come here, come here. Like, I want to see you guys and play with you guys." Um, but I was like, "Hey, I just had an accident." I never really thought how to address it other than that because I was like, "Yeah, I don't want to mess these kids up even more."
So it was natural for your character to play it down, or not even play it down, but just be natural about, hey, this is what went on, and they absorb what you feel. So you led by example, and I think that's fantastic.
Well,
You
thank
know,
you.
you're welcome. We had a guest, Matt Blanchard, who got paralyzed twice. That's a whole nother interview. But, the one thing that moved me most about his conversation is when he's rolling down his hallway to his home in a wheelchair, and he hears his kids talking in the kitchen, and he stops to listen because he hears them talking about him. And one of the children spoke up and said, "Man, I am so glad Dad's in a wheelchair or that accident happened because he's now at all our games and our school functions and everything." And while he's telling us this story, not only was I in tears, shut up, Terry, I know what you're going to say. 'Cause I'm an emotional guy, and he was in tears telling the story, but it is so what your perspective just carries over into your kids. And I think that's a fantastic way to be. So thanks for sharing that.
Thank you.
I gotta ask, do any of your kids want to go in the military?
My oldest wanted to. He's deaf. He's deaf in one ear. And so I think he felt, because my wife's in the military still. So I think he felt it was like his duty or his obligation to serve because I did it and she was doing it. Um, but they, they're like, hey, you're deaf. We can't take you. It's not waiverable. So he will, same thing with law enforcement. He's like, well, maybe I can serve as law enforcement. They're like, nah, come back later and see if this is a waiverable condition. And so he finally was like, I'm going to just go do my own thing. And he's off flying in Florida right now to a university. Elvis, he's thought about it. We've talked about it. He's like, oh, maybe I can go in the Rangers. Probably a great place for him. He's a great athlete. He's a baseball player. Um, but outside of that, I mean, the other kids are still kind of young, but it's something that I never really forced them to do. I want them to make their own decisions. And, we want to advise them on the best way to live their life. If that's through the military, they want to try it and they like it, then so be it. If they don't want anything to do with the military, then, so be it also. It's definitely a choice for them to make.
A lot of people talk about video games and some of the movies coming out that desensitizes war injuries and all that. Because in the video game, the guy, gets into life, and in the movie ends, and you see the actor that does show. Your kids have seen the reality. Have they ever made comments about video games or going to these war movies?
No, not really. We used to play shooter games like Call of Duty and stuff like that, and like, of course, they were like really good at it. So they'd smoke me, and it never came up. Like, I enjoy those. I love watching war movies still and shooting guns and playing video games, stuff like that. But that's a great question. It never really came up of, um, that they will make some comments to give me a hard time. Like, um, kind of, like I said, they'll be like, oh man, I smoked you, just like that other guy smoked you in Afghanistan. And I'd be like, give me your phone, or I would, have fun paying your own car insurance. You know what I mean? Like, just giving each other a hard time. So like there is some humor involved in it, but, I mean, that's part of life though, is just accepting what's good and bad and learning to laugh about it and just moving on and just, so.
All right, I gotta ask another question. Sorry, Spence, but I love rucking. Spence will look at me and goes, "Ugh, you keep going up those mountains," and he's a gym rat. And how do you train? I'm fascinated. How do you train? You have 8 kids and they're young. You have a job. I know how much it takes to train. How do you train for these gnarly 75-mile things?
I mean, it's commitment, right? So it's like, okay, I know I should be about X amount of miles, from this start date with X amount of pounds. So that means getting up at 4 a.m. Like, you got to do it, because at 6 a.m., like, I'm generally cooking pancakes, eggs, waking up kids, and I'll take them to school and I come back and I do stuff around the house or, do some work. And then next thing you know, it's like, yeah, it's time to start picking up kids. And then they got baseball and ballet and gymnastics and volleyball. So it never ends. But then you're like, well, it's 10:30 at night. Everyone's asleep. I gotta do 10 miles. And so you just go do it, because the alternative is you show up and you're not ready and you don't perform like you were hoping to perform. And grit will only get you so far. Like, you have to put the work in to condition your body. Like, it'll break people off, especially me. Like, I'm already broke down. So if I'm not putting in the work, I know it's not going to happen. Like I said, it's just goal setting, commitments, and then not making excuses. Like, it sucks. Yeah, does it suck to walk from 10:30 at night to like 2 a.m. and then getting up to feed your kids and take them to school and then do stuff all day? Like, of course it does. The benefit, you know, far outweighs, um, the alternative of just not doing something, so not even trying.
So, Daniel, we've been talking about kids, and obviously those are very important to all of us. What about your wife? How did she handle all that where most women might have left? I mean, aside from the 8 kids that she's tied to, what about, I mean, how did that pan out?
I'll never forget. I didn't really ask her. It never came up till years later. And she's like, I didn't care how you came home. I just wanted you home. And she told me that like a few years after it happened. I mean, it wasn't easy. Like it certainly caused problems in our household. I was trying to do my thing and, I probably wasn't the best person all the time trying to go through recovery. I'm not saying I probably wasn't. I wasn't. And, that hit me pretty hard. And she was like, look, we got to do this together and we're going to do this together. And even when we were married, before I got hurt, I mean, the special forces lifestyle is not conducive to a family home. Like we were gone years away from our family between combat, our other deployments across the globe. And then you got train ups and you have military schools and then you have, there's so many things that happen that take you away from the family in the name of service. And so like the divorce rate in our community is very, very high. And then you throw Iraq and Afghanistan in there, it just got even worse. And so I don't deserve her. That's for sure. She is an amazing woman. And man, and you're right. I mean, it takes a toll on people. I've seen people just get divorced, and just marriages and families fall apart. But like I said, I certainly don't deserve her. But she stuck with it, stuck with me through thick and thin and still going great today. So
Let me turn this around a minute. If we were interviewing her, what would she say about her inspiration with you?
that's a good question. The real answer was she'd be like, yeah, this guy's a big dumb animal. Like, I'm not surprised. Like he's going to keep doing these things. And this is exactly why I married him. Cause he works hard and he doesn't quit. And I'm like, I think there's some truth to that, but I mean, I think
what kind of animal would she call you? A big
Yeah,
dumb
yeah,
one,
yeah.
but what kind?
Yeah.
probably like a gorilla or something, like a mule or something, that just keeps going and is
Good.
stubborn. That's why I tell people, I'm like too dumb to quit, too stubborn to die, so it's kind of like a mule. So, but yeah, like I said, I don't deserve her. And I took a lot of things for granted. The things that she did while I was gone for all those years, now I find myself doing those things. I'm like, yeah, being a domesticated, like, uh, you know, being at home all the time. I was like, this is not cut out. I'm not cut out for this lifestyle because it takes a lot to manage everything from grocery shopping to cooking to bills, sweeping, mopping. I'm like, yeah, this kind of sucks. I tell people half jokingly, I was like, war fighting is easier than running a house. I would rather go back to the war than run a household. And I mean it. It's like, yeah.
What does she do? What does she do in the military?
So she's in the Army. She's an officer and, she is logistics and acquisitions. So, and right now she got picked up to go do the border mission right now. So they're pretty busy with everything that's got, especially with all things happening in Mexico right now. It's been out of control. So
Wow, that was pretty cool. Let me ask you, how come you don't seem to have PTSD? How is it possible? Or do you?
that's a great question. So when I was going through rehab, you're required every 90 days to see a shrink. And so I was like, okay, I'll go talk to this guy. And I'd ask him, I was like, look, I don't think I have any problems. I was like, I don't have nightmares. I don't have anxiety. I generally just don't care. I'm like, it could be worse. Like I just go on living like a normal person. And he's like, I don't know. Well, one time he's like, I think you're lying to me. I was like, why would you think that? I was like, this is like the safe space, right? The trust tree and in the nest, but I was like, none of the typical symptoms of like being in a crowd or fireworks or going to the range shooting guns where like, you start seeing people like freak out. I was like, none of this stuff bothers me. And, I have no desire to just drink all the time or pop pills or isolate myself from anyone or anything. And I don't know. Um, I had to have a conversation with myself a long time ago of like, look, you can't live your life being like suppressed by fear. Like you can never live like that. And I was like, yeah, I think that's fair because I've seen what it did to people, you know,
Mm,
fear of going out, fear of being a part of a family, fear of all that stuff, and then that led to drinking, and that led to drugs, abuse, and just self abuse, and all these things. I'm like, yeah, man, like this is not a way to live. And again, I can't help myself but go back to the same comment I made earlier. It was like, you cannot waste your life by living a certain way because those who sacrificed, everything they had would do anything to be here today, do the little things that we get to do still. And so the shrink never could give me a good answer, of like, but it's like, yeah, like this has been happening since the beginning of time. Some people, it affects everyone differently. And I really do believe that because I've seen people who've never seen combat who are deployed somewhere and are absolutely traumatized because they had to stay, in Kandahar airfield where the threat was still there, but it was a lower threat versus being out patrolling or on a raid and you're shooting someone in the face, or like what happened to me, I'm like, it's not a big deal. But there's some people who are just like living, breathing, just messes, sadly. Oh, I don't know. I don't know if that's a good answer. I don't know if that's an answer that makes sense, but I do believe people, you know, how they deal with trauma on their individual level is, I mean, man, up here, like
yeah,
it's
that's powerful.
else.
No, that's a good answer, and you're reinforcing the thought of it being a perspective, but you are definitely wired up a little different from the start, so that helps. It's good. It works.
So when you're doing these physical challenges, I mean, how much weight are you carrying on your back? You have the one leg with the foot drop, the other one, and you're going 24/7. How do you keep yourself going? How do you keep what do you say to a teammate? What do you need to hear from a teammate to keep yourself going?
So the weight, it varies. Like I typically won't do more than 30 pounds because I have to keep in consideration my prosthetic limits for the foot and that kind of thing. So that it doesn't get overloaded. So I won't go higher than 30. I think that's way too much for me. And then, what was your other question? I'm sorry.
What do you say to others to keep them going, and what do you need to hear?
Man, it goes back to the quitting comment we talked about earlier. I was like, man, this is gonna hurt, but it hurts a lot more when you give up on yourself. Like that quitting, it hurts more. Like this pain will go away. And for a lot of people, the pain of quitting and regret stays with them their entire life. So I really use that phrase because I mean it. And I think we all seen it where people live with regrets because of something they didn't do or they didn't finish. And they look back at their life and they're like, man, I wish I would have done this or I should have done that or finished this. And so I think really hammering that into people, and be like, look, this will end, you know, like on the 24-hour ruck. I was like, tomorrow will come. We had two guys who tried to quit, and we were just like, no, you cannot quit. Get back in formation. Let's go. I was like, tomorrow will come. Okay. Where you're at tomorrow is going to be the difference. You're going to be driving home, boo boo lip, with regret, or you're going to be in the van with us, mission complete. I was like, tomorrow will still be here. So think about where you want to be. And guys were like, okay, you know, and, people have said those things to me because they look at me and they're like, oh, he's in the pain cave. He's kind of hurting, just shake me and slap me. And they're like, let's keep moving. And yeah, I needed that. So
I've never heard boo boo lip. I love that.
Yeah.
You have the Spartan mask behind you. Have you ever thought of the Spartan death race?
I've seen them. I would try it, but I think that's next level. Like, I don't know if I could do it. Like, I can't run crawling around through the mud or my leg because it's an a one-way air valve, vacuum sealed. So the minute like I sit down or I'm crawling, like my leg falls off, so I'm like, yeah, I just don't think those types of things are applicable. And that's why I think I tend to do stuff like just rucking. But even that has its own problems. After I start sweating, literally my stump or my prosthetic will just start sliding off. And so it changes my gait where I'm like, I step, I have to get back into it. I step and get back into it, and I choose my battles wisely. So my punishment wisely.
That makes sense. Yeah, we hear a lot of phantom limb pain. Do you ever have stuff like that?
Phantom limb pain is very rare, but when it happens, it hurts. It hurts so bad. As a matter of fact, I was and I didn't think about it, but when it's a full moon, it'll beat me down. And I did a 13-miler. We called it the Comanche Moon Ruck. And it was a full moon and there's no lights. It's kind of like moving like the Comanche Indians would go like on a raid or a patrol. They use the full moon so they can navigate. And so it was about mile 9. Like I sat down and I was like, I can't do this. I was like, because my phantom limb pain was hurting me so bad. Physically, I felt okay. But I told my buddy Terrence, I was like, dude, and I had to walk probably maybe another half a mile to get to like a vehicle recovery point. But that night, my phantom limb pain was hurting me so bad. And I was like, dude, I didn't think about it, but it's a full moon tonight. And I was like, this is typically when it kind of kicks off. But I deal with it. The pills that they have for that, the medication, the side effects are awful. And I was like, I would rather just push through it and learn to kind of grit and laugh at it versus just popping pills and worrying about some weird side effects. So
I think it's time for our rapid fire questions. What do you say? You ready?
I'd almost like to ask the last one.
Okay.
No, the last question.
Oh, yes, sir.
That I wrote for Spence. Someone's listening right now and is in their own version of a ruck. They've lost pain, they've lost their identity, and they've lost everything, and they only want to get out of bed. What is the one thing you want them to understand about the possibilities of, like you say, that next day?
Man, I mean, it's this too shall pass. I mean, you got to have some patience and understanding of kind of where you're at in life and realize like it's not going to last forever. Whatever you're going through, whether it's pain or whatever it is, we all have something that we deal with every single day. These things don't last forever. And don't be afraid to ask for help. Because if you need help, like you will find somebody who will help you. And they will not stop until you're squared away. And I think that's a huge part of it is knowing that it's, whatever you're dealing with won't last forever. It'll pass, and never be afraid to ask for help.
Ready? Rapid fire. Now, rapid fire, the rules of the game, of the mission. How about that? Brief answers. And this is what dictates the end of the show. It's usually quite powerful. So, question number 1, Daniel. If you could go back to the version of you lying there being told your leg wouldn't work, what would you say to that person now?
It'll be okay.
Nice. And he really believes that. I mean, he really feels it in his heart. I love that. Question number 2. What's something people assume about you that's completely wrong?
Oh, man. Yeah, then I don't know. Man, that's a hard question. Next question. I'll come back to that.
All right.
I don't know if that's legal.
What's that?
I don't know if that's legal in the game.
It is because I actually have a part B that you could answer. What
Okay.
is something that not many people know about you that is your hobby? And Dr. Terry mentioned it in the beginning of the show.
Well, beekeeping,
There you go.
but you put a musical instrument in front of me, I will play it. There
For
you go.
real? No
It
kidding.
doesn't matter what it is. You put it in front of me, I'll figure it out very quickly, and then I love it.
So beekeeping, which is so, I would have never pegged you for that. But of course, after watching that movie, The Beekeeper, I automatically think you're a badass. So that's great. And that the fact that what is there a favorite musical instrument?
The guitar more than anything, but yeah, that's my go-to.
It's good. That's the artistic side of your brain working. That's
Yes,
good.
sir.
Question number 3 in a ruck. Are you the motivator, the quiet grinder, or the guy cracking inappropriate jokes at mile 10?
I say the quiet guy, you
Okay.
know,
Grinder.
the
Yeah.
grinder.
Nice. Question number 4. What moment in your life, big or small, still hits you in the chest every time you think about it?
Delivering my kids. So I delivered 6 of my kids. And being the first person to touch like your own child, like, man, is such a moment. And I see my kids, I'm like, man, I think about that all the time. I was like, especially when they kind of start talking back to me, I was like, brought you into this world, like
Take you out.
watch where you're going with this. Yeah. So that, like it's a little thing, but like I think about that when I see my kids, like, man, like how special of a moment that was. So yeah.
Yeah, I remember it well. Cutting that umbilical cord. And, that's a special moment that I'll never forget. Thank you for bringing that up. And the last question. All right, Daniel, you are a man who is a badass soldier. You are a leader, a motivator. But when it's all quiet, what do you want to be truly remembered for?
Being a good family man. Yeah, and to be honest with you, just a follower of Christ. You know what I mean? Just being that's it. So everything else, I just did stuff in my life. You know what I mean? So if I can, yeah, that's it.
That's good
I
enough,
like you say
man.
that's it, but that's so powerful. And
Yeah,
I
it
wish
is.
so many people would be able to do that, because that's more powerful than simple words coming out of your mouth.
Ah, so good. Daniel, thanks, because you are truly a motivator. You lead by example. Everything that you've said today has extreme value on it for everyone listening. So thanks. Thank you so much for sharing.
Thanks for having me, guys. Thank you very much.